Hey and hello! Today we are going to talk about the access modifiers. We've got 4 basic modifiers that will help us to keep our code either private or public. And the very important rule is that everything that can be private, it should stay private. If we don't want to have access from outside of the script to that variable or the function, it should stay private. And that's why the private is the default access modifier. So for example, we've got our variable in here and nothing is in front of the variable. It means that behind the scenes, compiler will add private modifier to it. So those two will be exactly the same. The private and the int like that is the same, because private is default. If we don't provide it, it will be private by default. And this is what we should be doing for most of the time. The variables should be always private. You will see a lot of tutorials in the internet, even on Unity official documentation site, that they use public access modifiers for the variables. But this is not a good thing to do. In the minute, I will show you why they do that and how we can do that better. First thing to remember, we've got 4 access modifiers, but we will only use 2 of those in our first few weeks, month of learning. So private is the default one and all the variables should stay private. We don't want to have access to our variables from outside of the script. The next access modifier is public. It will let us to get into this script from outside and get or change the value of variable or call the function. So if I type public in front of this variable, it will be visible in our Unity and it will be visible for other scripts. So we could call this variable from other script and change its value. And this is not a good thing to do. Let me go to Unity and show you something. If I click on our player, you can see now that in our script player movement, we've got those health points. And this is why a lot of people on internet adding these access modifiers to the variables so that we can access it from the inspector. And now we can change this value, for example, to 15, and this has higher priority than the value that we put inside the script. So they do that to expose this variable in the Unity, in the inspector, so that, for example, some game designers can adjust it to their own needs. But this is not a good thing to do. And now I will show you how to fix it. So let's say we want to keep our variable private, which we do, and still we want to expose it here in the inspector so that game designers can change those values. So in that case, Unity created for us a special attribute which is called serialize field. And we type it like that. We put brackets, inside we put serialize field, and then we put our private variable. So still it stay private. We can't get to that variable from outside, but we can show it in the inspector. And as you can see, it's there. We can type 20, for example, and it's still legit. So this is what we are going to use very, very often. We'll keep variable private, but we'll add serialize field attribute to it. And here we've got a function which will take damage because we've got some health points, and whenever somebody hits us, it will call this function and take some points down and display it in the console. In this case, we are calling this function in the start, so it doesn't matter what access modifier it has, but if we wanted to call it from outside, which probably we will, then to this function we have to add public access modifier, and this is very common to do. When it comes to functions, it's okay to be public if they need to be, but for the variables it should stay private if we need to expose it in inspector, we add serialize field attribute, okay? Keep that in mind and please stick to that. We have two more access modifiers which are protected and internal, but this is connected with object programming and inheritance, and this is something that we'll cover at some point in the future, so there is no need for me to explain it just now because we're not going to use it. So please, I want you to remember that and please practice it. Keep your variables private. If you want to expose them in inspector, use serialize field. And functions, keep them private as well. Unless you want to call them from the outside, then add this public modifier to those. And that's it. It's all about access modifiers. Easy, isn't it?